Hello there, welcome to the pod. Booze and fat loss. Let's talk about it. Can you still drink and lose fat? Fortunately, you can. I would say about 95% of my clients choose to incorporate alcohol into their lifestyles, and you've seen their before and afters, and so clearly you can lose fat with booze in the mix. But I want to be super clear. There is no amount of alcohol consumption that is physiologically healthy or even physiologically neutral. It is always a detriment, okay? You may have heard about compounds like resveratrol in wine, or maybe you know someone's grandparent that has been having a glass or two of whiskey every single day and they're 92 years old, living alone and still crushing it. Make no mistake about it, alcohol is poison. And so all other things being equal, you are technically going to be a healthier version of yourself the less that you drink. However, being that booze is so wrapped up into our culture and socializing, having a few drinks here and there, or maybe even more than a few, might just be a net win for you as an individual in terms of big picture life satisfaction or just straight up fun. And so we are going to be digging into how to determine the best type of alcohol for you, whether you have fat loss goals or you've lost a bunch of fat and you'd like to incorporate alcohol and maintain your current body composition. So let's dig in. Alcohol is actually a macronutrient, funny enough. Protein and carbs contain 4 calories per gram, and fat contains 9 calories per gram, as you know because you've heard me chat about these macros on the pod before. And alcohol is the 4th macronutrient, and it contains 7 calories per gram. Now, when we're looking at alcohol intake and fat loss, it's important to consider the calorie content of the specific type of booze that we choose to consume. However, there are a number of other things to keep in mind as well, specifically in terms of fat loss. And so we are going to go step by step through said considerations. First up is the calories, of course. And so the lowest calorie alcohol, if we're looking at a single drink, is going to be straight up liquor. So things like unflavored vodka, tequila, gin, whiskey, etc. And these types of alcohol are roughly 70-ish calories per ounce or per shot. So if you have a vodka water or vodka soda with some freshly squeezed lemon or lime in it, that is going to run you about 70 calories, assuming it's a single. Now, there are a whole bunch of really popular mixed drinks like this in can form too, and they tend to clock in around 100 calories. And typically, it's not because they add a calorie-containing mixer, but because they have more than 1 ounce of alcohol in them. It's like a drink and a half, technically speaking. Moving on to options like wine and beer, they are going to be higher in calories because they are not pure alcohol. They also contain carbohydrates, which boost the energy content up of these bevies. Also, the higher the percentage of the wine or beer, the more calories it's going to contain, because like we mentioned, booze has 7 calories per gram, and so a stronger drink equates to more calories. For example, an 11% alcohol glass of wine is going to be lower in calories than a 14% alcohol glass of wine, and the same goes for beer. A 5% beer is going to have fewer calories than a 7%er. Also, this is important. A glass of wine is 5 ounces, okay? When most folks go to a resto or a bar, they get the 9-ounce glass. That is almost 2 glasses of wine. The same goes for beer. 1 beer is 12 ounces, but when you go out, they typically serve either 16-ounce beers or 20-ounce beers. And so if you go for the 16er, that is 1.33 beers. And if you go for the 20-ouncer, that is essentially 2 beers right there. And this is helpful to know for calorie counts, of course, but also for understanding how much you are actually drinking on a nightly or weekly basis. If you're having a 9-ounce glass of wine 4 times per week, that's 7 drinks. Or if you're having a 20-ounce beer 4 times per week, that's essentially 7 drinks too. It's just something to keep in mind in the sense that you might be drinking more than you think. A simple way to think about this is that 1 bottle of wine is 5 glasses, not 4. 25 ounces in a bottle divided by 5 equates to 5. So a 5-ounce glass of wine is about 125 calories, and a typical can of beer, which is 12 ounces, is 150 calories. But if we reach for the 9-ounce glass of wine, we're looking at 225 calories, and if we have a 20-ounce beer, that's 250 calories. Now, I love craft beer, and it's gained a ton of popularity over the last while, and plenty of craft style beers are easily 6, 7, 8+% alcohol. And so just to give you an idea of how the alcohol content of something, wine included too, increases the calorie content, a regular 5% beer that's 20 ounces has 250 calories, but a 7% beer that's 20 ounces has 350 calories. And so just keep that in mind that this stuff does add up. What about mixed drinks like cocktails? There's really no generalized calorie count for cocktails just because there are so many different types with varying amounts of alcohol, as well as a wide variety of mixers. And the mixers are often where the calories really pile up. Typical cocktails are 2 ounces of liquor, and so that's about 140 calories. But then if we add funky syrups, juices, etc., that's really where the calories tend to add up. So if you like cocktails, the simpler ones are going to be lower in calories because they are far closer to pure alcohol. Okay, so that's the calorie piece in the booze itself. But like I mentioned, there are more considerations than just the calories. And the second one is how a specific type of alcohol impacts your appetite. For example, some folks find that wine stimulates their appetite while something like beer suppresses it. And this matters a lot because yes, they're quite similar in terms of total calorie counts per serving. But if you have a glass or 2 of wine and you find that you're instantly reaching for snacks, crushing a bunch of a charcuterie board, or ordering calorie-dense appies, beer might actually be the better overall option for you. Because we always want to keep the big picture in mind. Because even if you hypothetically went for a lower percentage calorie wine versus a higher percentage calorie beer and saved a few calories just in the alcohol itself, if you crush 800 calories worth of bread, cheese, and nachos because the wine ramps up your desire to eat, that is a net loss. And so the appetite piece is a super overlooked consideration in terms of which type of alcohol that is best suited to you. Another thing to consider is how buzzed a specific type of booze has you feel, and then how your eating behavior is impacted by that. And this somewhat ties in with appetite, but it's also just a question of, does a specific type of booze have you feel a little more loopy, a little quicker, and as a result, have you make more questionable food decisions, not only while you're drinking, but also later into the night, i.e. a classic example, late night pizza. We also want to be aware of how a specific type and amount of alcohol impacts you the next day. Because if you feel especially hungover from a certain booze choice, that can also impact your nutrition and movement decisions over the next 24 hours or more. For example, if beer makes you feel more hungover than other choices despite the total amount of alcohol that you're consuming being the same, if you drink X amount of beer and as a result you spend the majority of the next day on the couch watching movies and ordering in, that is definitely something to consider Because again, when it comes to fat loss and fat loss maintenance, we always want to be looking at the bigger picture. Also, as a bit of a side note hangover-wise, if a specific type of booze tends to impact you more negatively mentally and emotionally, and so in other words, you just find that, say, wine has you feel especially down or anxious, perhaps, because you are quite sensitive to something in it, or it decreases your sleep quality to a larger degree than other options, keep that in mind as well. Because if you're down in the dumps, you're probably not going to make the best food and movement decisions either. Not to mention that feeling just sucks. Another consideration is digestion. And this isn't so much directly related to fat loss, but it is going to play a role in sense of well-being. And so if you feel super bloated and gassy the next day after drinking beer, let's say, that very well may impact your behavior. So when in doubt, I'd recommend favoring types of alcohol that impact your digestion as minimally as possible. One more consideration that again isn't necessarily directly correlated to fat loss, but is really important for overall health, and it is the displacement of calories. When our goal is fat loss, we need to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose fat. And so the more alcohol that we consume, the more we displace or crowd out nutrient-dense calories via healthy food. For example, if you drink 1,000 calories worth of booze over the course of the week in total, that's 1,000 calories that you could have consumed via healthful whole food. And that means that you're now missing out on all of those beneficial nutrients because alcohol obviously doesn't have them. And so the more that you drink, the more likely that you are to become nutrient deficient. Also, the more that you drink, the more that you need to ramp up the quality of your diet and minimize processed food intake because you are working with fewer calories in order to meet your nutrient needs, being that 1,000 calories of your weekly intake in that example is now being allocated to nutrient-poor booze. All right, now I want to cover some hangover minimizing tips because the less hungover you are, the more likely you are to eat healthfully and maintain your movement practice. And that's clearly important stuff for fat loss and fat loss maintenance. Nutrition-wise, eating as healthfully as possible. We don't want a food hangover on top of an alcohol-related hangover. And so if you're going to be drinking, ideally you're eating in a healthful manner alongside the booze. You may also want to increase your salt intake because alcohol is dehydrating and it depletes electrolytes. And so personally, if I've had a few bevies, before I go to sleep, I toss a generous pinch of salt into a small amount of water and just drink it down. Products like Element or Relight can also work, and fortunately they are calorie free, and they also contain some magnesium and potassium as well. Movement-wise, I typically recommend the get up and go method, which is the following morning after drinking, just get up and head straight out the door for a walk just to brush off the cobwebs. And I know, who wants to do that, especially first thing in the morning after drinking, but it helps. And personally, I typically go and grab a coffee, which for me is an awesome motivator to get out the door because I absolutely love coffee. You can also do things like schedule a walk or a workout for the following morning, and not only will this benefit you on the movement front itself, but it also tends to set you up for success in terms of not overdoing the booze to begin with. Because in the back of your mind, you're like, I'm working out at 8 or 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm going to skip that nightcap and go to bed an hour earlier. Speaking of sleep, the earlier that you drink, the better. Or in other words, the further that you keep your alcohol from bedtime, the less that booze is going to negatively impact your sleep quality. Alcohol does an incredible job of disrupting sleep, and just know that even one drink is impacting you. Most likely not a ton, but it is. 2 bevies is going to disrupt sleep architecture more, and so on. There is essentially no better way to mess with the quality of your sleep than alcohol and other drugs. So every chance you get, favor day drinking and happy hour. Earlier the better. So what is the best type of alcohol for you as an individual when your goal is fat loss or fat loss maintenance? It depends on the considerations that we just covered, and so run through those and then you can decide on the best option for you personally. And lastly, if there was one sneaky thing to keep an eye out for, it would be the following. We tend to overestimate the number of calories in the alcohol that we are consuming and drastically underestimate the impact of our eating behavior while drinking and the following day. For example, a half bottle of wine has around 300-ish calories, but the 3 slices of pizza that you pick up on the way home are like 900 or 1,000 calories. And the restaurant brunch the next morning, because you didn't feel like cooking, was like another 1,000. So yes, booze has calories, but be sure to be mindful of how alcohol is impacting your eating behavior because it is so overlooked. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. On Instagram, I'm at n1fitness. On TikTok, I'm at the n1fitness. And on YouTube, I'm at marcussadou/n1fitness. Feel free to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform if you'd like to, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that you found this alcohol episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.